Welcome to Talking Out Your Glass. I'm Sean Wagoner. Chaiah Sullivan has been impressing the glass world and Instagram followers with his beautiful and intricate cactus-inspired functional glass to the tune of a 94K following and growing. He came upon the cactus after a friend mistakenly referred to another plant pipe he had created as a cactus and decided to give making a realistic cactus pipe a try. I never really expected to be the cactus guy, Sullivan says. Growing up in Paonia, a small town on the western slope of Colorado, Sullivan first discovered flameworking in 2005 at age 14. 2 years later, he started working as an assistant at a local hotshop, Rim Glass LLC. He practiced as a hobbyist while finishing high school, then put all his focus into glass. In 2010, he attended Penland School of Crafts, located in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. There he studied with Janis Miltenberger, a Washington-based artist who works with borosilicate glass to create large-scale narrative sculpture. Like Sullivan, much of Miltenberger's glass art is inspired by botanical elements found in nature, such as leaves and flowers. In 2013, Sullivan took a series of collaborative classes at Glasscraft in Golden, Colorado, where he had the chance to learn from artists such as Salt and Robert Mickelsen, from whom he learned the hollow sculpting technique he uses today. Says Sullivan, the inside of my pieces have the same contour as the outside. I put all my ridges in, and then along each ridge I add dots. Once those are melted in, I pluck each spike out individually. Sometimes I do get a little sick of plucking thousands of spikes over and over again. But once you see all your work come to fruition, it makes it all worth it. There's something about making it functional on top of being a beautiful art piece that really pushes me. After learning many different styles and techniques, Sullivan explored and experimented to develop his own style of work under the name Unparalleled Glass. He was awarded Dr. Dabber Glassmaster's first place in 2023, the Puffco Glass Open first place in 2022, and Champs Emerging Artist first place in May of 2017. Enjoy this conversation about the progression of Sullivan's cactus designs, the device attachments he's been developing, and his recently released foot pedals and oxygen systems. He also discusses recent lighting and installation pieces, as well as some fun projects in the works. Many thanks to the sponsors of this episode of Talking Out Your Glass: Salem Community College, Covington Engineering, Peace Water Solution, Glass Alchemy, and Mood Mats. To find out more about our sponsors, go to talkingoutyourglass.com, click on Episodes, Season 10, and Chaiah Sullivan. Chaiah Sullivan, thank you so much for joining me on Talking Out Your Glass podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Sean. Glad to be here.
You first picked up a torch in 2005 at the age of 14 and instantly fell in love with molten glass. 2 years later, you started working as an assistant at a local hot shop called Rim Glass LLC. Tell us about Rim and what you were doing at the studio.
So they're a local hot shop, and I first just met a friend who was working for them, and they're like, "Oh, you're a glass blower? I'm a glass blower. Come check out what we're doing." And being a lamp worker, I was fascinated with all of the hot shop stuff that they're doing, and I, just said I'd love to come and kind of help you guys out and learn some. And so, for a number of years, I was just kind of working as an intern and trading time for taking some classes with them. And then it just developed basically into a job. And so I actually still to this day work for them, assisting in their larger pieces that they make.
And what are those artists' names again? Remind me.
Jared and Nicole Davis.
Yeah,
They're
that's
the
right.
owners and runners of Rim Glass.
Yeah. Well, you practiced as a hobbyist while finishing high school, then put all your focus into glass. Between 2010 and 2013, you attended a number of classes at Glasscraft Incorporated and Penland School of Craft in the hot shop as well as flameworking. What were the
Yeah.
highlights of those learning experiences for you?
I mean, there was so much. The experience at Penland was just incredible. I loved like just being so immersed in um, the culture around just everyone there being so excited to learn what they're learning, um, and being so secluded. There's nothing else to think about except what you're diving into. And that was really great. I first took a class with Janis Miltenberger, and that really opened my eyes to what's possible with glass, and taught me a lot of the science behind glass that I didn't really understand. I had been working for 5 years at that point, actually, but didn't really have an understanding of glass. So my body had a good relationship with glass, but I didn't actually know what I was doing. And so that really opened my eyes a lot to, what I'm looking at, what I can do and can't do. And so I started progressing pretty quickly once I had a better understanding of glass. And then at Glasscraft, I took a number of pipe specific classes with a lot of the top artists in the industry, and the first being Eugene and Nady, and that really just blew my mind. That was definitely a very, very pivotal moment of my career and really changed everything for me.
After learning many different styles and techniques, you explored and experimented to develop your own style. When and why did you begin to focus on the cactus?
Well, I was always inspired a lot by nature. All the classes that I took, I kind of came back and made things that were very reminiscent of the teachers. And I got into a rhythm of doing like three pieces that were reminiscent of that artist. And as I was progressing, I realized that nature is really what pulled my inspiration. And at one point, I was working with somebody and he said, "Oh, let's make a cactus piece like this other one that you made," which to me, I was like, "Oh, that wasn't a cactus. That was just like a flower piece with, reeds and stuff coming up." But I said, "Oh, cactus is a great idea. Let's look into that." And so that's when I kind of came up with the hollow sculpting technique for making the cactus that I do. And I was so happy with how it looked and got such a good response from people because it was so, different than anything else out there that I just felt like I had to run with it.
Yeah, they're so beautiful.
Thank you.
Talk about how your designs have evolved over the years. When did you introduce your beakers?
Um, so the beakers, I'm trying to think. I think I introduced those around 2018, 2019 maybe. Um, and I was trying to find a way to kind of put more intricate detail into a piece, but not make it more fragile. And so having a way to contain it inside of the beaker or like the terrarium idea, I really liked that a lot because that gave me the opportunity to get more detailed and intricate with things, but it still be a solid piece that people don't have to worry too much about breaking.
Have the cacti themselves evolved?
Um, Definitely a bit. The general kind of approach to making them hasn't evolved too much, but I've definitely refined it a lot and gotten, much um, more anal and have much higher standards for how they need to be. Looking back at ones 10 years ago, I just laugh at them. I'm like, wow, this, so, the spikes were all lumpy and smooth and all the ridges were all over the place. And my roots especially were, spindly and so I've definitely refined things a lot. And I'd say the biggest development is in my flowers.
How have those changed? Is it color
Um,
or form?
a little bit of both. The structure as well. Definitely the color. I've evolved kind of the process in making my multi-layered cane that I use for the flowers to get as much fading contrast in all of the petals. And then also how I build them and structure it so that they are as strong as they can be. Before I would do little external bridges at kind of the widest point of the petals. And that was always really just stood out. And I never thought it looked very good because you could like see each of those little bridges very easily. And now I do it a different way where it's completely bridged all the way from the base or the stem of the flower to that widest part in the petal. And it blends in a lot more. Um, and in doing so, it kind of gave me the idea to do it in a way where I could actually make the flowers without a stem in the center and do my flower bowls that I do. And I really like doing those so it completes the piece and hides the function in a way, but then it also is part of the function. And I like to call those the flower bowls because they are for flower use.
I follow y- I follow you on Instagram, which everyone out there should.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, and I saw recently some pieces where your work was actually a knife handle. Talk about that work a little bit.
Yeah, so that was a really awesome opportunity. I had to work with a local metalsmith who does some amazing work. And he's just like one town over from us. So he lives like 15 miles from me. But his name is Ira Housewort. And he actually won Forged in Fire twice now, I think. Um, and the first time I got to work with him was actually on a big chandelier he was doing on a like local learning center down in town. It's like a arts and education center, and he was building or actually two chandeliers that had all squash vines kind of wrapping around this big circle that was the chandelier. And so I got to make all of the actual squash blossoms that attached to the vine. And some of them have lights in them, and some of them are just decorative. And so that was my first kind of dipping my toes into doing larger lighting and installation pieces. And that was really fun. And then in talking with him, he makes a lot of really, really nice high-end knives as well and different blades. And so we just thought, might as well do a knife handle. And so that was a really fun experience.
You mentioned Forged in Fire, that it's really interesting to me that someone hasn't come up with the idea to create a blown away that's for functional artists and flame workers.
Yeah, totally. And I have heard of people trying to do that, and I know somebody actually did. Jerome Baker made a little show about it, um, but it was pretty small in comparison. And I have talked with somebody who was kind of in design stages of doing a much larger one, and was actually I had been kind of on the list as one of the possible contestants. Um, and they were talking about, having Snoop Dogg as one of the judges, and, it was going to be $100,000 cash prize. But then before things could happen, COVID happened, and, he sent out an email saying, we still want to make it happen, but, who knows when? And, that was 4 years ago that I heard that. So who knows?
COVID killed so many great things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, back to your work, Chaiah. Describe and discuss your terrariums.
So the terrariums, I mentioned a little bit before about I really like the idea of encapsulating fine detail and intricacy inside of a chamber so that it's, safe from, people accidentally bumping it against something. I did a lot of intricate floral detail stuff that was on the outside, and a lot of people, were very scared to touch it or pick it up, and, selling it was much more difficult, even though people love to look at it, they were scared to handle it. And so that's kind of where the terrarium idea was born from, was to be able to still do that level of intricacy, but have it a bit safer and something that people would be more um, excited to use.
So, are terrariums and beakers the same thing,
Um,
or how
Yeah,
do
I
those
like I
differ?
think so. Yeah, I mean the in my understanding is like just the beaker refers to the shape, which scientifically I've heard isn't even like what everyone knows as the beaker shape on a piece is not actually a beaker in scientific terms. But that's just kind of like what the whole pipe industry has accepted as the beaker shape.
Tell us a bit about your alien cactus.
So those I was kind of feeling like, doing my normal cactus stuff was always kind of the same. I always made it green, or I varied a little bit with going with the red and the fade a little bit, but I was always making them look as realistic as possible. And so I wanted to play with the idea of doing something that was just really abstract and different. And so I wanted to do the alien theme to like really go bold with the colors and, accentuate the spikes a lot more. Um, And my idea behind it was to kind of do a limited edition series for those so that, I wouldn't be recreating any of those specific ones. And so it's like I've only done a few solo ones, and I've done a number of collaborations that were like alien cactus themed as well. Um, but whereas my standard cactus stuff, it's like I will make the same piece multiple times. If somebody wants to order that same piece, I'll, remake it. But with the alien cactus stuff, it's like a limited edition series, and I want to keep that way.
Your product packaging for shipping and transportation is amazing. How did you figure that out?
Oh, thanks. That was really just like kind of trial and error and just playing around with ideas. And, um, it started with just kind of like pushing the piece down and seeing the indents that it made and just kind of just plucking out. And then I got a little bit more refined with it by doing like an outline with toothpicks in the foam. And then from there, kind of cutting out. And, I'll lay the piece back down several times to see, how deep it goes. Do I need to cut a little bit deeper in this spot or that spot so that, every part of it lays against some of the foam nice and gently. And then doing that multiple layers on some of those bigger pieces. Yeah, it took a while to do some of those, but I really like how they turned out. And um, I think it's really worth doing on some of those really more high-end pieces.
Yeah, because with your work, especially the shape of a cactus, all those delicate spines need to be protected.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the ones that have root bases on them.
Yeah. Your awards include Dr. Dabber Glassmasters, first place in January of 2023, and Puffco Glass Open, first place December of 2022. Tell us about some of those award-winning works.
Those I feel, very proud of. And it was just a great opportunity for me to like really just kind of go all out and not worry about, oh, is someone going to buy this or not? Is just, do the best I can. And the kind of the style of my work, it's very time consuming. And so those competitions were really nice because I could take as long as I needed to. Whereas, like the champs competitions, they're always in person and you have a limited amount of time. And just the nature of my work is much more time consuming. And so these competitions were really nice for that. The Dr. I mean, sorry, the Puffco one actually was really interesting how it came about is a friend of mine who's really into Puffco. He asked me if I could make a piece for his device. And he loved it so much. And then, like a week later, he reached out, being like, "Oh my gosh, they're doing a competition. You should enter." And so I did. And, I didn't expect for a minute that I would be the winner. But, the public spoke, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Were the pieces beakers or what were they?
Um, so they would attach to the top of the device, and so they
Oh,
were
God.
like the Puffco one was, I guess they would say were the Puffco one was, like had a very elaborate perk on the inside, and I should have sent you pictures of these pieces actually. I think I might have sent you one of the. Oh no, no. Sorry.
You
I
still
think
can.
I sent you a picture of the second year competition of the Dr. Dabber that I won. Um, and that was a terrarium piece. But the first year was I made a cactus and I actually cut it in half, and it was kind of like a cage around an internal piece that had roots that wrapped around, and inside of that I did a flower spinner, and so it was like a cluster of flowers that would actually spin. You could blow on it, and the whole thing would spin. Um, and then that sat on top of like a little tiny beaker with a root perk inside of it. And so that is probably like one of my more favorite pieces. Is I've never really done anything remotely close to that style of like cutting something in half and using it to encase. the function of the piece. And I lo really love that one a lot. I should send you some pictures of that one.
You won Dr. Dabber again in 24?
I did, yes. Um, and that one,
Congratulations.
thank you. And that one was an alien cactus style one, and it actually had a internal spinner like inside of the perk. And so when you hit it, the the airflow and the bubbling would make it spin, and it was all glow in the black light with glow in the dark flowers, and um, then the spinner was a cluster of peyote buttons that also glowed in the dark. Or
Awesome.
not glow in the dark, UV reactive. I have to differentiate those because a lot of people call the UV reactive glass glow in the dark, but it's not, because all of the flowers that I do actually are tipped with glow in the dark glass. And a lot of people don't know that because I don't really advertise it very much.
Is that glass hard to work with?
It is, yeah. It's a little temperamental and you can burn out the glow very, very easily. But I pretty much only use it for doing the tips of my flower petals, and I've, never had any issues with that.
In order to create your pieces, you use a graphite rod to press in indents while at the same time accentuating the cactus's ridges. Tell us more about your hollow sculpting process. Did you learn those techniques from Robert Mickelsen?
Yeah, actually, the what I would refer to as hollow sculpting, yeah, I did learn a lot of those techniques from Robert Mickelsen in one of the Glasscraft classes that I took. And that really had a big imprint on me when he was talking about, you know, you use a blow hose connected so that you can, push with a tool inward while you blow, and then that, pushes against the tool from the inside. And so that's how I can get the ridges nice and crisp the way I do, is that it really like, conforms either side of the glass around the graphite rod that as I'm pushing it in. And without that, it'd be a lot easier to just kind of like make a valley indent. If I got a little bit too much hot on one side or the other, it would just kind of like push the whole thing in and not have a nice clean ridge. And so that is definitely the hollow sculpting I learned from Robert Mickelsen. But then some of the things I do, like the glass on glass joints that are also sculpted, um, that I refer to more as solid sculpting on hollow, which I learned a lot from Salt when I took a class from him, and really like, to differentiate those two types of sculpting, even though they're both on hollow, one is hollow sculpting and the other one is solid sculpting.
I read that the spikes improve functionality. Is that true?
I wouldn't say they improve the functionality of hitting it, but they definitely help with holding it. You're not likely to drop one of these because they just kind of grip to your hand. And I've had a lot of people, it goes one way or the other. People are like, oh, well, I can't touch that. It's too spiky. Or people are like, I can't stop touching it because I love how spiky it is.
Describe and discuss the device attachments you've been doing.
Well, I mean, it did all start with that Dr. Dabber competition. I hadn't really made any before my friend asked me to make one for him. And then the second one I ever made actually was the winning piece of that competition. And since then, I've just, gotten a lot of people asking for different um, attachments for their devices, most of which are Puffco, but also a lot of Dr. Dabber. And it's been really nice to kind of give me the opportunity to um, challenge myself to, make something that still is a nice artistic piece and functions well, but also has that criteria of fitting onto this piece and, not looking all big and awkward or top heavy. And so it's been nice to have that as a challenge.
You've also recently released foot pedals to help control torches and have been designing and building oxygen systems for a number of years. Talk about those things a bit.
Yeah, so I, grew up and still live in a very small town, and oxygen was a big issue, and just the hassle of running tanks to go get them filled up, but then also the cost of it. And it was getting to the point where I wasn't going to be able to continue to blow glass because of that cost. And so I started with looking into different options and started with what's called a home fill and just ran off of those for a number of years, but they couldn't keep up with me. They would just fill welding tanks that we would use to run the torches, but they would take days to fill one, and then I could empty one of those tanks in a few hours, depending on the work I was doing. And so eventually I went down a deep, deep rabbit hole of making like the high volume style oxygen systems. And I also didn't like those just by themselves because you'd have to kind of build this large system to run your torch or the torches you have for your studio. But then if one person came and joined in, then it couldn't keep up with what you're doing. And it wasn't until I figured out a really great way to use both systems in tandem with each other, so that the high pressure home fill system was a backup that supplemented what the low pressure high volume system couldn't keep up with. And once I did that, I like went, really deep down a rabbit hole of figuring out all the different logistics and nuances of how everything works with each other, to come up with, in my opinion, as good system as any other system out there. And it's different in a lot of ways where, like other systems out there that I've seen are either really, really simple and you have to kind of keep an eye on things constantly and maintain when it's turning on and off and figuring everything out, or you go the other route of like everything's computer controlled and automated. And I wanted to make everything automated, but I didn't want to rely on technology for every little thing. And so I figured out a way to achieve all of the same things, but in a more passive way. And so I'm really happy with how that turned out. And I've helped a number of people build their own systems, or I've also built systems for a number of other people, and large studios. And then in working on these systems, it's all about efficiency. And so I've been developing foot pedals for quite a while. The main idea is to be an economizer pedal to turn the entire torch on and off, and it'll leave it a little pilot flame so that, if you take your glass out of the flame for even 5 seconds, you can turn it off. And instead of losing pressure in your system for those 5 seconds, you're gaining pressure. And so any little amount like that can be a game changer when you're running on these oxygen systems. And so it started with the economizer pedal, but then I realized, it'd be a fool to not also offer the standard outer stage foot pedals that is like what everyone uses for their torches. Um, and so I released those kind of, I'd say March of this year. And I've gotten a really good response so far. And people have been really enjoying them a lot. And, it's tricky to get your foot in the door for this kind of thing where, there's already the tried and true pedals out there that people know. And, I'm a brand new pedal manufacturer. And so to kind of jump in there and get such a good response has been really nice. And I just hope to keep running with it. And I'm hoping to come out with new options soon for different foot pedal configurations that people can use to, specific to their needs for their torch.
So, is your studio and workshop in Paonia, and is that where you grew up?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I actually was born in Ridgeway, which is about 90 miles from Paonia. Um, and we moved a lot as a kid, but we ended up moving to Paonia when I was about 8 years old, and still moved house to house many times in that time. But yeah, I've been in Paonia for the last like 26 years. And I've done a lot of traveling. I for a long time thought I would want to move somewhere else, but so far I haven't found anywhere else that I would rather live than here.
It's very beautiful over there, that's for
It
sure.
is. Yeah.
So, when and how did you meet Marcel Braun and get involved with his Project 33? Tell us about some of your subsequent collaborations with him, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I first met him. Actually, it was a brief meeting I met when I went to work with Caleb Home, Darby Home's son, and that was a great experience. I got to work, I made several pieces with Caleb, and then got to make one with Mike Luna and one with Darby as well during that time. And Marcel just was coming out to pick up a furnace that somebody had made who lived close to Darby, and so he hung out for a few days, and so I got to meet him then. And then he was teaching at the Arizona project the following year. And because of my hot shop background that I have, I was able to kind of get in with helping Marcel with his teaching because he was doing a lot of um, close to Boro hot shop stuff. He didn't have an actual glory hole going at the time for the Arizona project, but he had furnaces going. We were pulling filigrana and making traditional reticello, um, similar to in a hot shop, but still on a torch. And so I was able to help a lot with that. And then, became friends with Marcel and went out to the Project 33 a few different times to stay on his compound and just help with all the things they were doing. Mainly the pulling of the large marinis that they were doing to make the coins that he's now doing it kind of as a currency. And so that was really fun because actually one of the hot shop classes I took at Penland many years ago was specifically about marini making. And so that came in really in handy with helping Marcel with those things. And I was able to, help them do builds for their marinis. And, they didn't have to teach me what needed to be done or do it for me. I was able to kind of just jump in and be like, oh, this is what needs to happen. And so that was a lot of fun just to, get a bunch of experience. And he actually had a glory hole going for Boro and, a full hot shop for Boro. And so that was a really amazing experience to get to do some Boro hot shop work. And then in that did a collaboration with him where it was, I would say, an alien cactus theme, but it was like using the pieces of the filigrana as the spines, and then using some of his Raticello cabs in the flowers. And that piece was a lot of fun to get to do. But then there's also, so many people there all at one time that, there's just collaborations going on with all these different people. And so it's a really great experience. It's a unique one as well, where you go and you don't have to pay anything and you get to stay for free and they feed you, but you have to be a contributing part of the project that they're doing. And so there's been a lot of people who have kind of left there being upset because they thought they were going to get paid for the work they were doing. But the way I approached it was like I am getting paid, I'm getting a free place to stay and being fed and getting to just be immersed in, all of this amazing work that's getting done. And, you can learn so much by doing that if you just immerse yourself in it. And so I recommend anyone who has the opportunity and like the freedom in their life to just take time away and go immerse themselves in it is a wonderful experience.
Tell us about some of your other favorite collabs.
Well, I'd say like Brian Jacobson is one of the people I've done the most collabs with, and we really have a super great kind of connection and vibe with each other. And I can't think of a favorite with him. Like all of our collaborations have just f flowed so well and have been really, really fun things. And I think part of that is that, we get along really well as people. But other like top collabs that I am really proud of, or some of my favorite ones, I would say the Salt collaboration that I did. I really, really love how that turned out a lot. Another one was when I got to do one with Banjo and Calm. They taught a class, and I went out and joined it and ended up getting to do a three-way collab with the two of them. And super happy with how that piece turned out.
Thanks for tuning in to Talking Out Your Glass. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Salem Community College's Glass Education Center, home to associate degree programs in scientific glass technology and glass art, as well as non-credit glass workshops and special events, including the International Flameworking Conference. SCC Glass students explore the medium's vast potential in the 20,000 square foot glass center with studio areas for flameworking, glass blowing, cold working, kiln working, and fabrication, all under one roof. Learn more at salemcc.edu/glass. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Covington Engineering. Finished your flame-worked glass with Covington's professional line of cold working tools, now located in Meridian, Idaho. Visit covington-engineering.com for your cold working needs. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Peace Water Solution. Peace Water Solution not only keeps your headies clean while you smoke, it also makes your hits as smooth as silk. It's made from 100% all-natural, food-grade mineral, vegetable, and fruit extracts. Dabs or flowers, it's a game changer, especially for hard-to-clean pieces and expensive functional art. Learn more at peacewater.com. That's Piece water.com. This episode of Talking Out Your Glass is sponsored by Glass Alchemy. Glass Alchemy is a second-generation family-owned business. Expanding the artist's color palette since 2000, Glass Alchemy manufactures high-quality, colored borosilicate glass, made in Portland, Oregon, and melted by glass artists worldwide. Visit their website for your color needs, glassalchemy.com. This episode is sponsored by Mood Mats. Mood Mats is the USA's original neoprene upcycling company, accepting everything from wetsuits, gaskets, weather stripping, wheelchair seat molds, stock car tires, and plenty more clean donations to make the most conscious sesh mats on the planet. For more information, visit moodmats.com. Another artist that you work for and with is Martin Gurdon. I did a podcast with him recently and found out that
Oh
you're
yeah,
actually
totally.
his studio assistant as well. So
Yes.
I wondered how the two of you met and kind of talk about your work with him in his studio.
Yeah, that's a funny story actually, and it takes it back to me working with North Rim Glass. So Martin grew up kind of over a mountain pass from us, and I'd, never met him or anything, but he'd been blowing glass, and he got to a point. I mean, I'm sure I don't need to tell you. I think he probably told you the story of um, this when you did the podcast with him, but he almost had to stop blowing glass, and then he found Jared and Nikki. Northrim Glass was the only studio he could find nearby that was willing to rent him space that had glass that was going to work for him, because the glass he was using was not compatible with the color that he was using. And so his only option was either to quit or find a studio that had glass that was compatible. And luckily, Northern Glass worked out for that. And so he was driving back and forth over the hill 2, 3 times a week for about a year. And shortly after he started renting space, I started helping him. And I enjoyed the process so much that I was like, yeah, I want to keep working with you because it's a lot of fun. And for me, that's what glass is. It's like it's fun, and I continue to work in the hot shop with both North Rim Glass and Martin because of how much I enjoy the process. And the fish was a completely different approach to blowing glass than I'd ever done, especially in the hot shop. And I just enjoyed it so much that I wanted to keep going with it.
I think he pretty much said he couldn't do what he does there without you. So he had very good things to say about you.
Well, that's nice to hear. Yeah, we've talked about this a number of times, and I'm like, well, you could find someone else to do what I do, but the the convenience of that I am here, and he found the studio. It was actually Jared and Nikki had found a property they wanted, and so they were trying to sell their property with the building that was their studio, and Martin was looking to build a studio, and so they ended up just buying it and moving over here. And so that's why now there's two studios close to each other. Um, and so yeah, there's many people who could do what I do for Martin, but I think a large part of it is that we also work really well together, and it's one of those things that almost from like day one, we just knew what each other needed, and there's so little talking that needs to happen. It's like we're on the same page all the time, and we're both, looking ahead and know what the piece needs. And so I think that is mainly what Martin refers to when he says he couldn't do it with anyone else, is that, he doesn't have to tell me anything most of the process. And I think that was really, really a game changer for him.
So, is there a glass scene in or around these small Colorado mountain towns?
I mean, not really. There is a number of glass blowers, especially in this valley. I'm surprised with how small it is and how small the population is. There are a number of glass blowers. Um, but in terms of an actual like glass scene where things are going on and people are getting involved or, doing glass shows, there's not much of that going on. Like both me and the two studios I work for, like everything we make gets sent away. And, the our local community rarely sees much of our work.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not too
Yeah.
far away from you guys. I'm down here in Salida, so not too
Oh,
far.
okay. Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, that's not far at all. I have a good friend, glassblower friend, Berserker, or Brian Cirque, who lives in Gunnison.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a small world, the people that are involved in glass here in Colorado.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Chaiah, what's coming up for you in 25 and 26? You've been getting passionate about lighting and installation pieces. Tell us about some of those projects in the works.
Yeah, that's definitely what I've been getting most passionate about recently. The pipe stuff is I still enjoy it a lot, and especially, if I figure out a new design that I can do in the cactus is great and a lot of fun. But really it's like right now I'm looking to find something that's kind of going to push me out of my comfort zone. And um, lighting I've done a bit of over the years, but not a whole lot. And after doing that chandelier project with Ira, that just like really, really sparked my passion back up. And um, lighting itself, I have a lot of ideas that incorporate the idea of the refractive nature of glass and using that to kind of transfer light through the glass to different places. And so I have a lot of ideas that I'm working on right now, but they're all kind of on the back burner at the moment because I have a lot of, life things going on that, you know, I gotta prioritize. Um, but lighting itself is something that I really, have a lot of good ideas that I want to get to. And then installation pieces are really what's kind of the passion for me right now is um, pieces that are either just like a wall hanging art or like ones I've done are like mounted on the wall, or like larger installations that are multiple pieces that like kind of make one big collage of work or something.
Are
And the
they
first one that I
cactus themed?
more, it's more focusing on the flowers, and some of them do have some cactus going on, but for the most part, it's like flowers and leaves are what I've been focusing on. And the first one that I did that I was really, really happy with was actually a wedding present for Martin and his now wife, Indigo. And it was a wall mounted piece, and I put a few hundred hours of work into it probably. And it was one of those things where I was like, I could never afford to get a present for someone like this, but because it was such a passionate thing that I was, learning so much and working towards something that I want to continue to do in the future, it was really worth putting in so much more time than
I
maybe I
got to
should have
see it
for.
on our interview. I got to
Oh,
see it
awesome.
over Zoom.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And so that one I really love a lot. And so I want to do more stuff like that. Um, and I want to do smaller, more like simpler ones as well so that it can be more affordable to people. But what I'm really passionate about is doing even larger scale things than that one.
So, Kaya, in your estimation, has there been a drop off of interest in functional glass in the last couple of years? I don't know, why I'm sensing that or feeling that a little bit, but if your answer is yes, What do you think is driving that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always kind of ups and downs, just like in any economy in any industry. There's the highs and the lows. And I do think that we're in a particularly low right now. But that being said, I've still been making quite a few sales, and it was actually like I want to say late teens, like the late 20 teens, when things were just crazy and people were just dropping so much money on functional pieces. And unfortunately, I wasn't really a well-known enough artist to tap into that at the time. And and then since then, there's a big lull during COVID, and then it kind of went up again after COVID, and now it's definitely taken another lull. Um, but like, the last few months have been declining a little bit, I'd say. But before that, even though, I've been getting a lot of feedback that the pipe industry is in a big lull, I've actually been doing better than I ever have in my career.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Yeah, totally. And so I think part of it attributes to that it's not my one and only thing, not all my baskets are in that. And so because I have the freedom to just keep playing and making what I want to make for the most part, um, I guess that shows to the audience and, makes them want to support more and get more interested.
So, do you think the functional glass world is kind of just following the economy at large and people are being conservative about spending and things like that right now?
Yes, yeah, I definitely do think so. And I don't think it'll ever quite go back up to what it was like 8, 10 years ago when, people were spending so many tens of thousands of dollars on a single functional piece. But I do think that it is going to go back up from what it is right now. And, if you can stick out the waves, then, you'll make it.
You said making it functional on top of it being a beautiful piece of art really pushes me. Tell us more about combining those two worlds.
Yeah, so my kind of growing up, I never felt like I was artistic. And it wasn't until I found glass that I realized that I could be artistic. But even still, I feel like, with glass, it's so limitless. You can do anything, and that freedom was almost too much for me. And it was hard for me to like think, oh, well, what do I actually want to make? It could be anything. How do I narrow it down to what I'm actually going to do? And so having something that, confines it into what it needs to be made it a lot easier for me to then become artistic with what I had to work with. And so, the functional pieces was an obvious one, whereas, it has to fit that functional criteria. And how can I also make it beautiful? But, that goes with like drinkware. I've really enjoyed doing that as well, or like the lighting and really the first thing I've been doing that doesn't have to fit into a specific criteria like that is kind of these installation pieces I'm doing. And I guess they do still have to fit into a criteria of, it has to be able to be on the wall and not, stick out essentially. But that's the most freedom that I've been able to work with and not just feel like it's too much for me to narrow it down to what I actually want to do. And so, yeah, having something that like is keeping it in a criteria that then I can play with the beauty has really helped me focus on what I can actually do and been a really good challenge too. And like, how can I make it look very beautiful and also make it function? And part of that was like, I mentioned the flower bowls that I do. And then I'd also do mouthpiece stoppers that are oftentimes flowers as well. And so the more things I could do to like make the functionality of it hidden, I really liked that a lot. And it's actually gotten to the point where people that even know that it's a functioning piece have questioned if it's a functioning piece. And that's far beyond what I ever wanted. My intention was just to like hide it from people who don't know. And if you know, you know. And now it's gotten to the point where even the people that do know don't know. And that's really fun.
Subscribe to Talking Out Your Glass podcast wherever you stream, and don't forget to subscribe on our new YouTube channel, Talking Out Your Glass. Until next time, stay glassy.